My dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Right here in Hythe, Kent, the right here in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, right near the English Channel, where we are trying to slow the world down. The world is moving faster and faster and faster in the wrong direction. And we're trying to vibrate the sound, the Shabda Brahma, the transcendental sound that Srila Prabhupada put out in all of his transcendental literatures, especially his major works, the Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna book, and so on, to try to turn the tide of the direction and the speed at which the world is going farther and farther away from Krishna. It's a daunting task, but it is possible by the supreme potency of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his sincere followers, especially Srila Prabhupada and his sincere followers. Okay, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram from Sri Krishna Lila Stava by Srila Sanatan Goswami explains why we're doing this. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho, Kali Dvanduditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun, risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshakshadayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable for it pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atimi chochata kada anamun chagadachin mam premnarit kantayok spuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached 13th chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Dhṛtarāṣṭra leaves home, and the impetus he got to do so comes from the preaching of Vidura, who was returned to the palace after going on pilgrimage, just for the purpose of delivering Dhṛtarāṣṭra, his elder brother. We're starting with text 27 Vidura is in the middle of talking to Dhṛtarāṣṭra. He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands, either by himself or by hearing from others, the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Purport. There are three classes of transcendentalists. One, the Dhira, or the one who is not disturbed by being away from family association. Two, one in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi by frustrated sentiment. And three, a sincere devotee of the Lord, who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting, and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in his heart. The idea is that the renounced order of life, after a frustrated life of sentiment in the material world, may be the stepping stone on the path of self-realization. And this is in italics, by the way, the next part, to emphasize. But real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one has practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. One may live in the darkest jungle alone, out of home, but a steadfast devotee knows very well that he is not alone. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is with him, and he can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the Lord's holy name, and descriptions of his qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and so on, in association with pure devotees. And this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. I'll read that again. One should therefore practice devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the Lord's holy name and descriptions of his qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and so on, in association with pure devotees. And this practice will help one awaken God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. One who desires material benefit by such devotional activities can never depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he sits in everyone's heart. Nor does the Lord give any direction to persons who worship him for material gain. Such materialistic devotees may be blessed by the Lord with material benefits, but they cannot reach the stage of the first-class human being, as above mentioned. There are many examples of such sincere devotees in the history of the world, especially in India, and they are our guides on the path of self-realization. Mahatma Vidura is one such great devotee of the Lord, and we should all try to follow in his footsteps for self-realization. Text 28. Please, therefore, leave for the north immediately, without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach, which will diminish the good qualities of men. Purport. One can compensate for a life of frustration by becoming a Dhira, or leaving home for good without communicating with relatives. And Vidura advised his eldest brother to adopt this way without delay, because very quickly the age of Kali was approaching. A conditioned soul is already degraded by the material association, And still, in the Kali Yuga, the good qualities of a man will deteriorate to the lowest standard. He was advised to leave home before Kali Yuga approached, because the atmosphere which Vidura created by his valuable instructions on the facts of life would fade away due to the influence of the age which was fast approaching. To become a Narottama, or a first-class human being, depending completely on the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, is not possible for any ordinary man. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:28 that a person who is completely relieved of all taints of sinful acts can alone depend on the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Dhṛtarāṣṭra was advised by Vidura at least to become a Dhira in the beginning, if it was not possible for him to become a sannyasi or a Narottama. Persistently endeavoring on the line of self-realization helps a person to rise to the conditions of a Narottama from the stage of a Dhira. The Dhira stage is attained after prolonged practice of the yoga system. But by the grace of Vidura, one can attain the stage immediately, simply by willing to adopt the means of the Dhira stage, which is the preparatory stage for sannyas. The sannyas stage is the preparatory stage of Paramahansa, or the first grade devotee of the Lord. Text 29. Thus, Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra, the scion of the family of Ajamita, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus, he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation as directed by his younger brother, Vidura. Purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great preacher of the principles of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, has stressed the importance of association with sadhus, pure devotees of the Lord. He said, even by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection. We are not ashamed to admit that this fact was experienced in our practical life. We were not favored by His Divine Grace, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. By our first meeting for a few minutes only, it would have been impossible. I read that, excuse me, I have to read this sentence again. Were we not favored by His Divine Grace, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, by our first meeting for a few minutes only, it would have been impossible for us to accept this mighty task of describing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in English. Without seeing him at that opportune moment, we could have become a very great big business magnate, but never would we have been able to walk the path of liberation and be engaged in the factual service of the Lord under instructions of His Divine Grace. And here is another practical example by the action of Vidura's association with Dhṛtarāṣṭra. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra was tightly bound in a network of material affinities related to politics, economy, and family attachment. And he did everything in his power to achieve so-called success in his planned projects. But he was frustrated from the beginning to the end, so far as his material activities were concerned. And yet, despite his life of failure, he achieved the greatest of all success in self-realization by the forceful instructions of a sadhu, a pure devotee of the Lord. The scriptures enjoin, therefore, that one should associate with sadhus only, rejecting all other kinds of association, and by doing so, one will have ample opportunity to hear the sadhus, who can cut to pieces the bonds of illusory affection in the material world. It is a fact that the material world is a great illusion, because everything appears to be a tangible reality, but at the next moment evaporates like the dashing foam of the sea or a cloud in the sky. A cloud in the sky undoubtedly appears to be reality because it rains, and due to rains, so many temporary green things appear. But in the ultimate issue, everything disappears, namely the cloud, rain, and green vegetation, all in due course. But the sky remains, and the varieties of sky or luminaries also remain forever. Similarly, the absolute truth, which is compared to the sky, remains eternally, and the temporary cloud-like illusion comes and goes away. Foolish living beings are attracted by the temporary cloud, but intelligent men are more concerned with the eternal sky, with all its variegatedness. Text 30. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Only Prabhupada could put it in that way. Text 30. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subal of Kandahar, or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, just as a good lashing from the enemy is the delight of great fighters. Purport. Saubalini, or Gandhari, daughter of King Subala and wife of King Dhṛtarāṣṭra, was ideal as a wife devoted to her husband. The Vedic civilization especially prepares chaste and devoted wives, of whom Gandhari is one amongst many mentioned in history. Lakshmiji, Sita Devi, was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband, Lord Ramachandra, into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at home or at her father's house, but as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. Instructions for the renounced order of life were imparted to Dhṛtarāṣṭra by Vidura, and Gandhari was by the side of her husband. But he did not ask her to follow him because he was at that time fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kinds of dangers in the battlefield. He was no longer attracted to so-called wife or relatives, and he decided to start alone. But as a chaste lady, Gandhari decided to follow her husband till the last moment. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra accepted the order of Vanaprastha, and at this stage the wife is allowed to remain as a voluntary servitor. But in the sannyas stage, no wife can stay with her former husband. A sannyasi is considered to be a dead man civilly, and therefore the wife becomes a civil widow without connection with her former husband. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra did not deny his faithful wife, and she followed her husband at her own risk. The sannyasis accept a rod as the sign of the renounced order of life. There are two types of sannyasis: those who follow the Mayavadi philosophy, headed by Sripad Shankaracharya, accept only one rod, Ekadanda. But those who follow the Vaishnavite philosophy accept three combined rods, Tridanda. The Mayavadi sannyasis are known as Ekadandi Swamis, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi Swamis, or more distinctly, Tridandi Goswamis, in order to be distinguished from the Mayavadi philosophers. The Ekadandi Swamis are mostly fond of the Himalayas, but the Vaishnava sannyasis are fond of Vrindavan and Puri. The Vaishnava sannyasis are Narottamas, whereas the Mayavadi sannyasis are Dhiras. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra was advised to follow the Dhiras, because at that stage it was difficult for him to become a Narottama. Text 31. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice, worshipping the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Subala. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home by prayers, by offering fuel in the sacred fire, by giving the brahmanas in charity land, cows, grains, gold, and so on, and at last offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. One who is not prepared to practice injunctions prescribed in the Shastras cannot be a good man simply by book knowledge. Modern householders are practiced to different modes of life, namely to rise late and then take bed tea without any sort of cleanliness and without any purificatory practices as mentioned above. The household children are taken to practice what the parents practice, and therefore the whole generation glides towards hell. Nothing good can be expected from them unless they associate with sadhus. Like Dhṛtarāṣṭra, the materialistic person may take lessons from a sadhu like Vidura and thus be cleansed of the effects of modern life. Maharaj Yudhishthira, however, could not find in the palace his two uncles, namely Dhṛtarāṣṭra and Vidura, along with Gandhari, the daughter of King Subala. He was anxious to see them, and therefore asked Sanjaya, the private secretary of Dhṛtarāṣṭra. 32. Maharaj Yudhishthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where is our uncle, who is old and blind?" Text 33. Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura? Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura, and Mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhṛtarāṣṭra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously, and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganges? Purport. The Pandavas, especially Maharaj Yudhishthira and Arjuna, anticipated the after effects of the Battle of Kurukshetra and therefore Arjuna declined to execute the fighting. The fight was executed by the will of the Lord, but the effects of family bereavement, as they had thought of them before, had come to be true. Maharaj Yudhishthira was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle Dhṛtarāṣṭra and aunt Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. When, therefore, he could not find his uncle and aunt in the palace, naturally his doubts arose, and he conjectured that they had gone down to the water of the Ganges. He thought himself ungrateful, because when the Pandavas were fatherless, Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra had given them all royal facilities to live, and in return he had killed all Dhṛtarāṣṭra's sons on the battle of Kurukshetra. As a pious man, Maharaj Yudhishthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle in company. Dhṛtarāṣṭra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord, but Maharaj Yudhishthira was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. That is the nature of a good man and devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own, and thus rectify them as far as possible. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text 34. When my father Pandu fell down, and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? 35, text 35. Sutta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master, Dhṛtarāṣṭra, was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Purport. Sanjaya was the personal assistant of Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra for a very long time, and thus he had the opportunity to study the life of Dhṛtarāṣṭra. And when he saw at last that Dhṛtarāṣṭra had left home without his knowledge, his sorrows had no bound. He was fully compassionate toward Dhṛtarāṣṭra, because in the game of the battle of Kurukshetra, King Dhṛtarāṣṭra had lost everything, men and money, and at last the king and the queen had to leave home in utter frustration. He studied the situation in his own way, because he did not know that the inner vision of Dhṛtarāṣṭra had been awakened by Vidura, and that therefore he had left home in enthusiastic cheerfulness for a better life after departure from the dark well of home. Unless one is convinced of a better life after renunciation of the present life, one cannot stick to the renounced order of life simply by artificial dress or staying out of the home. Text 36. First, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence, and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master Dhṛtarāṣṭra, he began to reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Text 37. Sanjaya said, my dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls. Purport. That great souls cheat others may be astonishing to know, but it is a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Lord Krishna also advised Yudhishthira to tell a lie before Dronacharya, and it was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of what is bona fide. And the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. That is the verdict of Gita and Bhagavatam. Dhṛtarāṣṭra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjaya, although he was constantly with Dhṛtarāṣṭra as his personal assistant. Sanjaya never thought that Dhṛtarāṣṭra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhṛtarāṣṭra's going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjaya. Sanatana Goswami also cheated the keeper of the prison house while going away to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And similarly, Raghunath Das Goswami also cheated his priest and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord, anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Text 38. While Sanjaya was thus speaking, Sri Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene carrying his tumburu. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his younger brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. Yudhishthira then spoke as follows. Purport. Devarshi Narada is described herein as Bhagavan, due to his being the most confidential devotee of the Lord. The Lord and his very confidential devotees are treated on the same level by those who are actually engaged in the loving service of the Lord. Such confidential devotees of the Lord are very much dear to the Lord because they travel everywhere to preach the glories of the Lord in different capacities and try their utmost to convert the non-devotees of the Lord into devotees in order to bring them to the platform of sanity. Actually, a living being cannot be a non-devotee of the Lord because of his constitutional position. But when one becomes a non-devotee or non-believer, it is to be understood that the person concerned is not in a sound condition of life. The confidential devotees of the Lord treat such illusioned living beings, and therefore they are most pleasing in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that no one is dearer to him than one who actually preaches the glories of the Lord to convert the non-believers and non-devotees. Such personalities as Narada may be offered all due respects, like those offered to the personality of Godhead himself. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, along with his noble brothers, were examples for others in receiving a pure devotee of the Lord, like Narada, who had no other business save and except singing the glories of the Lord, along with his veena, a musical stringed instrument. Hare Krishna. That went pretty fast. That went very fast.
Wow.
We're at 7:47. We're ending at the same time every day here for a while. Okay, Hare Krishna. Such wonderful realizations. We'll stop our reading today. at text 38, and we'll start tomorrow in text 39. Hare Krishna. I can't wait to hear the reflections and discussions of the assembled sages. As it says here, it's very important to hear in the association of devotees. Hare Krishna. Rati, you were first off the block every night for a while now. It's very nice to hear. Hare Krishna.
Jai Guru Maharaj, please open up the curtains to transcendence and enliven us.
I'm not opening the curtain. I'm just, well, I guess maybe I am opening the curtain, but it's Srila Prabhupada's play. Hare Krishna.
And from Gopakanya Devidasi.
Gopakanya, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj. Blunt, plain, simple truth of Srila Prabhupada's purports of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam through your daily reading service is taking and compelling us to depend and surrender more and more to Lord Krishna every day. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and cheers to all the assembled sages. Jai Ho.
Jai Ho. Very well put. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I just tried to play my little part by reading it out loud to the best of my ability. Hare Krishna.
And Sudevi Dasi says,
Haribol Sudevi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hope everything's going well in Florida for you.
And from Bhaktarupa.
Haribol Bhaktarupa.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All
Jai
glories
Ho.
to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Ho.
Really nice to be listening live again. Been playing catch up all week. Thank you for reading this evening. Tonight we heard about Maharaj Yudhisthira's amazing aversion to fault finding. I've struggled a lot with a critical mind, and it pains me a lot when my mind gets into a fault-finding mode directed towards the devotees who are saving me. How can I stop this? Hare Krishna.
By serving them. It's a simple solution. By serving them means by glorifying them, by speaking their glories to others, by giving them gifts, by serving them in whatever way you can, and by doing what we're doing. I mean, doing what we're doing, hearing the Bhagavatam, translated and commentated by Srila Prabhupada, in the association of devotees, is the best thing you can do. The reason is because by doing this, our hearts become purified so that our hearts can feel the right thing. I mean, to be frank to you, the fact that you are speaking openly in public about how bad it feels for the mind to go on a fault-finding mission is a symptom of a good person. Srila Prabhupada explained to us that when a good person does something not so good, he feels bad. But when a bad person does something not so good or bad, he feels good. So the fact that you feel some regret is actually a part of the process of devotional service. Devotional service is a process. Surrendering to the Lord is a process. It happens over a long period of time. And this feeling of regret for what we've done wrong or what we're doing wrong is an extremely important part of that process, because it actually purifies the tendencies. Just by doing it, by feeling regret, one purifies one's heart of those very things that he's feeling regret about. So by serving the Vaishnavas in every way you can, and everyone has a different capacity, therefore we heard in this reading, according to the sincerity of one's purpose, Krishna responds. So if your purpose is sincere and deep enough, and you respond to that regret you feel by doing the right thing, then Krishna gives you direction from within to perfect your life. There's no doubt about it. Hare Krishna.
From Rasa Nandini Dasi.
Hare Krishna Rasa Nandini.
Ha ha ha. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and followers have become transcendental cheaters by actually leaving their families to pursue Krishna consciousness, or else they have left material relationships in their hearts. Haribol, respects to the assembled Vaishnavas.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
And from Rati Manjari.
Jai Rati.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Tonight I appreciated how Maharaj Yudhisthira worried that he had been ungrateful to Dhṛtarāṣṭra and his family, even though they had practically been his perpetrators for years. Very magnanimous.
Most magnanimous. Most magnanimous. Symptom of great heart.
From Vijay Krishna.
Hare Krishna Vijay Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada, your most glorious spiritual master, used to say that we shouldn't go to the church for the asking of our daily bread. Taking in consideration this context, my question is, what is the meaning of the expression, leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing in his heart? What kind of full dependence is this? Please?
It means to depend on Krishna for our well-being and our maintenance. There's a verse in the Gita in which Krishna says to Arjuna, Yadricha labha santushto dvandvatita vimaksadaha. It means that one should accept gains which come of their own accord. We shouldn't make plans for gains, make plans for our maintenance, if we're actually in the renounced order. But if again I say, if the sincerity of our purpose is strong and proper, then Krishna, he makes all arrangements for our needs, and even for the comfort that everybody needs a certain degree of comfort, especially in this Kali Yuga. And those facilities are given by Krishna to his devotees, without the devotees looking for them or trying to make arrangements for themselves. And that is a sign that the facilities that we're given are coming from Krishna. And if we take the facilities that are offered and use them for sense gratification, and don't use the facilities in order to serve Krishna and serve the devotees, then those facilities are said to be sent by Maya. So if you can use whatever is sent to you, things that come of their own accord, without you making arrangements yourself, personal arrangements, then, and those things are used in the service of the Lord, then they are to be considered sent to you by Krishna. Hare Krishna.
And from Visharda Devidasi.
Visharda Radha, Hare Krishna.
Dear Keshava Bharti Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. My greatest gratitude to you. You always bring very fond memories back from 1982. Your servant Visharda Radha Devidasi.
Wow, 1898. I've been living for long enough now that I had to stop and think where I was in 1982. I was in Europe. I was in Spain. I was in France. I was traveling around Germany, Holland, Belgium, Italy, Greece. I don't remember where it was. France. Anyway, by you saying that, I'm remembering fondly those days also. Those wonderful festivals that we used to hold. Hare Krishna.
From Rati Manjari.
Yes, Rati.
There were also some Prabhupada gems. How he related that he might have become a big businessman, but that only by the mercy of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had he been able to leave his family life and enter the service of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Yes, I thought that when he said, and serve the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that was a gem. That was a real gem. Yes, thank you.
And also his descriptions of how he cheated his family transcendentally by leaving home.
Yes.
But that this transcendental fraud had been for the good of everyone involved.
Yes.
I love it when Srila Prabhupada speaks about his personal spiritual life.
I also took sannyas kind of early, and I was told by one of my better friends that my ex-wife put a picture of me on her altar. And some of her friends couldn't understand because they were very much against my renouncing. And when she was asked, she said, "Oh no," she said, "he belongs there because he saved me from so much trouble." And the person asked her to explain what she meant. And she said, "Well, you know, since my husband took sannyas, I have seen some of my friends, my loved ones and friends get divorced and have horrible scenes in their family and so much suffering and this and that." She said, "And he saved me from all of that." And when I heard that, I said, yes, you know, she's the saint of the family. That's what I thought. And she was the saint of the family. Hare Krishna. I know of at least one couple that named their child after her. They were so attached to her. Kolini Devi Dasi. Hare Krishna. So if it's done properly, if it's done with the right mood and for the proper purpose, as we mentioned again, the sincerity of purpose, then it becomes auspicious for everybody. Even the so-called person who was left behind, she ended up being a great soul, loved by so many persons. Able to take care of so many people spiritually. Great devotee of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Once I was in New York and I was getting ready to go to India This was 1975, beginning of 1975. We were going to the festival for the first time, and she was in Dallas. She called me up. He said, you know, something very strange is happening. I said, what's that? She said, I'm beginning to become very attached to Srila Prabhupada. And she said, I think it's because of the steps that you've taken, the bold steps that you've taken to advance. I'm getting some of that benefit without doing anything myself. Yes, she told me that. That's the truth. Hare Krishna. Therefore, if you do something, if you cheat somebody, if it's for a great cause, it ends up being auspicious for everyone. Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari writes, Jai Srimati Kalini Devi Dasi.
Yes, Hare Krishna. And when she passed away, just before she passed away, one of the cows, I think it was a young bull that she used to take care of, came into her room. Came on her own, on his own, came into her room. And there's a famous picture with her touching him on the nose. And you could see the cow was saying goodbye and feeling separation. Hare Krishna.
From Daitari Hari.
Jai Daitari Hari.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you again for these readings. Maharaj Yudhisthira is the personification of not seeing others' faults, but trying to see his own. What are the parameters for transcendental fraud? Being a Kali Yuga wretch, I sometimes become excited at the prospect of cheating people for Krishna, ultimately for their benefit, but with a tinge of the tendency to like tricking them and feeling like I'm somehow smarter than others.
Go out on Sankirtan and distribute books. And use your cleverness and your whatever you've got in order to convince them to give something for the book. That's not a cheating at all, not at all, because it's only beneficial for everyone. But still, some people think it is. Oh, you're going out and you're collecting money, what is this, That's the way to realize it. Hare Krishna.
And from Yadutama.
Hare Krishna Yadutama. Haven't heard from you for a while.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hope you don't live too close to Ukraine.
All glories to Prabhupada. So good to be here live. I've been hiding in the rebroadcast, going off what Prabhupada said about a good versus bad person. Did Dhṛtarāṣṭra feel remorse for his actions leading up to the battle of Kurukshetra?
I don't know. It doesn't say so, but I think that you can take it that because of Vidura's words, he did feel it. But that's a speculation on my part. I don't know for sure. It never doesn't say it explicitly in the verses. And I haven't read the commentaries of our acharyas on that particular verse and that particular section, so I don't know. But I would imagine that he did, otherwise he wouldn't be able to get the strength to do that. The power of the association of a pure devotee.
Rati Manjari?
Yes, Rati.
She says, thank you for sharing your personal spiritual journey of renunciation.
Hare Krishna. anything that I can do, please, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, let me do. Hare Krishna. I thank you all very much for your lovely reflections, and especially for your appreciation for what I'm trying to do. It's greatly appreciated by me and gives me a lot of strength to continue to do this every day, and to tolerate the things we have to tolerate to go through this stage of life and all the things that have gone on in the last few years. Thank you so much. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samabheda Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bo. See you tomorrow night. Same time, same place. And same topic, as we hear the preparatory stage for the Bhagavatam being spoken to Maharaj Parikshit by Shukadev Goswami. Hare Krishna.